From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Tisha Bader.
Hi, this is Micah Halpern, sitting in for Tisha Bader, and here is the JBS News Update for Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad are hard at work preparing for their next attack and next war with Israel. They're using three tactics to achieve their goals. Tactic number one, digging new tunnels. Tactic number two, developing better drones. And tactic number three, expanding naval capacities. The newly dug tunnels that have been recently uncovered by the IDF reach to the Israeli border, but don't cross it. In times of war, Hamas hopes to emerge out of the tunnels on the Gaza side, close to the partition fence, and then break through the fence. IDF sources say that Hamas has added 1,000 rockets to its existing arsenal since the end of Operation Guardian of the Walls last year. The big difference is that now Hamas is focusing on the quality, not quantity, of their drones and missiles. This new arsenal is more accurate and more sophisticated than their previously used weapons. Hamas also has well-trained drone teams that have not been targeted by Israel. They're also smuggling equipment through the Gaza-Egypt border by disguising their cargo to look like civilian shipments. They're utilizing the shipments to manufacture larger and stronger engines for boats already used by Hamas's military, especially their naval commando units, and to assemble explosive boats. Hamas is becoming more adept at warfare. They call themselves the GDL, the Goyim Defense League. Their aim is to draw attention to their hatred of Jews. Over the weekend, 3 members of the GDL pulled their truck into Beverly Hilton and shouted ugly anti-Jewish expressions at hotel guests. Their truck was covered in anti-Jewish slogans, and they shouted, "The Nazis are coming." 2 members of the group were dressed as Nazis. The third wore a hat with fake side locks, peyote. They were trying to intimidate hotel guests. The police were called. Their website, Goyim TV, describes their vision this way: all members of the community and wider society should be treated as equals with the same rights, regardless of their race, age, sex, religion, political beliefs, or any other immutable attribute or self-assigned designation, unless you're a Jew or the Shabbos equivalent. The group's major philosophy is called replacement theory. They believe that Jews will replace whites in the United States. It's one of their group's mantras. They believe that a cabal of political elites, especially Jews, are trying to destroy white culture or race through mass immigration of non-white people. That belief is very much a part of their white genocide theory and their slogans: "You will not replace us. Jews will not replace us." This group is very small, but Jewish-hating people, and the sentiment is catching on with others across the board. This is very hateful rhetoric. Israel granted refugee status and citizenship to about 6,000 Russian Jews. They were obviously granted the right of return. The refugees, these new Israelis, receive even more benefits than those granted to a simple Olet or Jewish immigrant. The 6,000 Russians were granted the same refugee status as Ukrainians who were truly escaping for their lives. The Russian Jews were not escaping, but they believed and they lived with the fear that they might be targeted in Russia simply because they were Jews. Now, 2 months and more since the invasion into Ukraine and the arrival of Russian refugees to Israel, 1,800 of these Russians have returned to Russia with their Israeli citizenship, plus the cash and other benefits given them by the Jewish state. You might likely imagine that Israel is not pleased. The Israeli government, you could say, is livid. Russians all flew back on either El Al or Israel. They're the only 2 airlines that fly from Tel Aviv to Russia, and the tickets are extremely expensive, not to mention that the flights from Moscow to Tel Aviv were paid for by Israeli taxpayers. These 1,800 people are clearly not refugees. That's obvious by their return. They exploited Israel to get their Israeli passport, a passport that's more respected in the Western world than the Russian passport. And now a look at this evening's programming on JBS. At 7, Rabbi Ammiel Hirsch reflects on the tragedy of George Floyd and describes the complicated and flawed pursuit of earthly justice. At 7:30, Ellie Cohanim speaks with Nathan Sales, former Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights of the U.S. At 8, retired General Stanley McChrystal draws on his experience as commander of Joint Special Operations Command, the JSOC, and U.S. forces in Afghanistan as he discusses Israel, the U.S., and the future of warfare with MirYam Institute's Benjamin Anthony. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with Eugene Aryeh Lebovitz, commander of troops in Haifa during the 1947 War of Independence. At 10, Ron Wasserman and Justin Ellis join Shachar Azani to discuss Fuel for Truth, their organization whose mission is to empower young American Jews to stand by Israel. And coming up next, it's ILTV's Insider. This is Micah Halpern and the JBS News Update. I want to wish everyone a good evening.